Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Rogue Monkey podcast. My name is Kevin and I host a show that delves into people's journeys, explores their experiences and shares inspiring stories from the moments and life events that have brought them to where they are today. In this episode, we are joined by Jack Roberts, a national level swimmer from the City of Liverpool, who's been on an incredible journey and has now become a cardiac physiologist. Our conversation joins Jack at the start of his latest visit to Kenya, where he is part of a team offering life-changing heart surgery for young people. We discover how his passion for swimming and desire to make a difference led to a daring challenge of swimming the entire length of Kenya to fundraise and create sustainable healthcare solutions in different parts of the world. On top of this, Jack takes us through the challenges he has faced along the way and how the lessons he took from sport have allowed him to succeed and finding a new purpose in life after his swimming career ended. You can find out more about Jack's mission via the link in the show notes. So with that, we're going to get straight into it and our latest episode of the Rogue Monkey podcast as we've just touched down in Nairobi and speak to Jack Roberts. Hello, Jack, and welcome to the Rogue Monkey podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Very grateful for you joining us. I gather you've just touched down very, very far away from the UK.
I have. I've currently just landed in Nairobi, me alone, without my suitcases, unfortunately. So hopefully they'll be arriving soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed they follow very swiftly behind. But I think it's quite nice that your bags were so attached to the UK that they decided to stay for a few extra days. But hopefully it's resolved swiftly. Would you like to give our viewers and our listeners just a little bit of an introduction, a bit of an overview so we can understand who Jack is and a little bit about your story so far?
Yeah, so I'm Jack. I used to be a former swimmer. I was able to reach a national level. I went to British Champs and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to World Trials in 2019. I then got a job working in the NHS. So I'm a paediatric cardiac physiologist now. And I travel out to Kenya twice a year now with a charity called Healing Little Hearts and My Moyo. And we come out here to help provide free cardiac surgery to children and babies here. The charity is not limited to Kenya, but it does. They also go to other places such as India and Jordan.
Right. Lots of threads already for me to start to unpick. So let's jump back into the swimming world, because for a lot of people, that's the starting point and it leads to lots of other things. So just take us through those early years, the experience, not just for you, but the people around you, because as we know, swimming is very much a family activity, whether they like it or not.
It is. So I've not mentioned it before. This is another thread to talk upon. But this year I've decided to swim the length of Kenya. So we can come back to that. But the idea on that is to kill two birds with one stone. So we'll begin with the swimming journey as to why I've decided to do this. So I started swimming when I was very young, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And I really enjoyed it. And I progressed through. I swam for the City of Liverpool. Initially started out with a club called Everton and Liverpool Penguins. And I just felt really passionate about it and gave a lot of time and dedication to it. And not only was it me that done that, but it was also that my granddad and my dad sacrificed a lot of their time and a lot of their energy and money as well, buying all the protein shakes and club memberships. And as you know, racing shorts, they're very expensive these days. So by doing that, swimming gave me a lot of discipline, getting up early morning training sessions. I was going before school, again after school. And by removing myself from the swimming world or stopping swimming, I found myself losing those qualities. I'm quite hard on myself. I personally found myself losing them qualities. So I'd like to get back into swimming, to thank my granddad and thank my dad for the time that they've given me.
Well, there's so many, I guess, aspects to sport in terms of what it gives you. And let's be honest, working in the NHS can be extremely challenging and require resilience, hard work, discipline, all the things that swimming gives you. But from your personal experience, just talk about that transition from stepping away from being an athlete into the wider working world, because whether, people are swimming at a club championship level or competing all the way at a national or British championship level, that transition is difficult. So what did you learn from that experience, and what did you take from those athlete years into, let's be honest, a very challenging working environment?
So I found it very challenging. The first couple of years, the transition phase from swimming to working life. And I found that because I'm very much what's next. I'm always looking for the next thing, and I quite like to see progression. And swimming gave that for me because it was measured on time. If I touched that wall and I seen a PB, I'd progressed. But removing myself from the swimming world and going into a working life, I had no evidence-based results to show that I was moving forward in life. And that's what I found as myself struggling with. I was unable to see myself moving forward, but I am quite hard on myself. Obviously, I went and done a degree. I went and got a job, but it wasn't black and white for me. And that's the aspect that I particularly struggled with the most.
So I'm curious, because having had quite a few of my family being involved in the NHS, it's extremely hard work. At what point did you go from, this is a really hard job, it's been a really hard transition to go from being an athlete into this job, I'm now going to try and go to another continent and start adding another layer of challenge to the way that I live my life? So just talk us through that experience of how this notion of what's going on in Kenya came about, how you first learned about it, but also what motivated you to actually then start getting involved yourself.
So it was the feeling of always wanting to do something more. It was the quest for finding, results and progression in life. And having joined Alder Hey, obviously very junior, I seen surgeons and doctors traveling out to Kenya twice a year, and I thought, wow, that would be the next step for me. That would give me, or help selfishly give me, maybe some fulfillment in life. But equally, it's obviously a fantastic thing to do. So I approached the lead of the charity, who just so happens to be a consultant cardiologist in Alder Hey, and I said, I'd very much like to come out to Kenya with yourself. And he said, Jack, you're very junior. It's tough work out there. Maybe in the future. So coming from the swimming background that I've come from, I'm a very disciplined, I'm a very ambitious person. And to me, that's all well and good, but I see myself differently. I didn't see myself conforming to the natural progression route, as you say. So I said to myself, right, what can I do to change this, to be different than everybody else? So I went out there and I decided to find sponsorship for this camp, because I thought, if I can go out here and I can come back to him and say, I've got you X amount of money and it's going to fund you your next camp, but I want to come, he can't say no. So that's exactly what I did.
Okay, so most of us, and I'm going to say this very ignorantly because I'm definitely nowhere near as travelled as you, but our experience of Kenya is probably a textbook and a geography lesson, and that's about it. So let's take us through. You've convinced that consultant to let you come along. You've landed for the first time. Your bags hopefully have arrived with you. And let's talk about what that first experience was like, because anywhere I've been in the world, I always know that my perception of something versus the reality, there's often been a bit of a gap. And when you come back, people say, well, describe it. How was it? What did it feel like? You've obviously been out there quite a few times now and had time to reflect on that first experience. So just take us through what that was for you.
Yeah, so this is my 8th time in Kenya on one of these charity missions. And the first time I'll never forget, because it completely changed my perspective on life. Coming out here and seeing a different way of life and the struggles that these children and families go through to get healthcare that's so readily available to us. It completely changed my perspective. And if we're being completely open and honest, it kind of gave me a little bit of imposter syndrome. So coming over here and seeing these surgeons and doctors and nurses who are just, extremely well trained, got so many qualifications behind them, so much experience, made me realize that there's so much more to life that I don't know. Like, there's so many avenues and routes out there outside the world of sport that you can go into. But just like swimming, it took me a lot of time to be able to get to a national level. It will take you a lot of time to get to the position that these guys are in. So I did struggle with a little bit of imposter syndrome on the first camp, but I turned that into a positive aspect and used that as drive and ambition to shift my focus from the swimming world into, right, this is what I want to do now. This is how I want to contribute to, this is my next step.
So just take us through what that first trip looked like. Obviously, I know there's similar aspects to all the trips, but you've landed there, you've got some experience, perhaps not as much experience as the consultants that have done it many times, but just take us through that day-to-day experience and some of the things that you felt you impacted on in that first trip of yours.
Yeah, so we landed in Kenya. It's a completely different environment than the UK. It's not as well developed in the rural areas, but as you come into the city, I'm looking out the window now. There's a lot of high-rise buildings. The people were really friendly. They were so welcoming, so kind. And yet that kind of opened my eyes to realize, like, not all of them, but some of them don't have as much as we do, but yet they're still so happy. However, back in the UK, I can see and obviously relate to ourselves being quite hard and quite tough on ourselves. But coming out here has made me see that there's no need for that. Like, we're quite fortunate, and at the end of the day, we should just enjoy ourselves.
So from a project ambitions point of view, obviously you say you've been out there many times now. How has it evolved across the time that you've been there? Because obviously the first time you've been there, you had no idea what to expect. Whereas actually now you've been there a few times, and perhaps some of the surprising aspects or the things that you didn't realize were a normal thing in Kenya, you've kind of got used to now. What does that look like, say, for this trip that you're on now, having been 8 times?
Yeah, so much more comfortable and familiar in my surroundings now. I know everybody, which is nice. They all know me by name, and they always joke and say I might as well have a Kenyan passport at this point. But what's different from this camp to the first camp is the progression. So I've been lucky enough to consecutively come on every camp that has been offered to me, which is every camp. And I've managed to see the progression of the trip. So when we first come out, we were very much just seeing patients in clinic and then listening them for operations, which is all well and good. We come out twice a year, but the question is, what happens in the interim? What happens when we leave and go home? So the project, or this camp, very much took a shift towards wanting to create a sustainable centre out here in Kenya. So between the first camp and the 8th camp, we've managed to train up the team have managed to train up 2 local surgeons. We've held a symposium, which is where a group of people come together and just present a lot of information, a bit like a conference. And we have received a grant from a very charitable organisation, and that will hopefully allow us to create a sustainable centre here in the coming years. So to do that, they'll need a permanent anaesthetist, a permanent surgeon, and a permanent cardiologist, and then they'll expand from there.
And that's real legacy, right? That's the part of, instead of just turning up and actually going in, obviously making an impact in the time you're there, and then that resource being removed, that obviously does leave a legacy. So for yourself now, I guess that's kind of changed the way that you view the experience, because the first time you were going, it was all new, it was all exciting. I need to learn this and I need to learn that. And now actually it's almost like a little bit of, what are you leaving behind? And that's got to have changed the way that you value these trips. Like, what is, when you come back, in a couple of weeks' time, and people are saying to you, how was it? Like, that's probably going to be a very different bit of feedback and experience that you've had compared to 4 years ago. So how is it kind of changing for you across that time period?
Yeah, completely. It's amazing to see every time we come back. The local team here are just, they've excelled leaps and bounds. They were fantastic to begin with anyway, but these things are just minor details. So to see that, and to see that the care that the kids receiving is significantly improving is fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk then a little bit about this swimming challenge, because that seems to be a thread that, despite having stepped away from the competition pool a few years ago, you've not been able to completely leave behind. So just take us through how this idea first came about, because let's be honest, swimming the length of Kenya, 670 miles, is not a small undertaking, especially in some of the places that you're going to be doing it. So just take us through the idea, how it first came about, and then how you plan on executing that distance over the next 9 months.
So this idea first came about when the consultant here told me that I needed to be more experienced to come to the camp. And then all the ideas started popping into my head as how I could fundraise for this project. So this is something that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time now, but maybe never had the confidence to do so because it was stepping out my comfort zone. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get the camp sponsored, and then that was it then. My foot was in the door. But coming here, as I mentioned, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome. Now, I'm not to the level or standard that these guys are at, and we all have different qualities. And my granddad always said to me as a child, "You've got a talent there, Jack. It's swimming. Use it." So I came up with the idea to try and kill two birds with one stone. So I thought, why not combine swimming and the camp that I so heavily want to be involved in, and, help push forward to create a sustainable centre here in Kenya. So I decided to combine the both of them. So I decided I would swim the length of Kenya, which is 1,070 kilometres, which is equal to 670 miles. So now that I've begun swimming that distance, I've realised it's not a small feat to accomplish. But yeah, it's a great challenge to put myself into, because it brings me back to my swimming roots. So the reasons why I'm doing this, obviously we've touched upon Kenya, and we've touched upon my granddad, but it goes much deeper than that. It's the qualities that was provided to me by the sport of swimming. So it gave me discipline, and it gave me ambition and motivation. And although I personally feel I kept the ambition, I feel by stepping out of the swimming world and getting a full-time job in the NHS, I began to start living comfortably, because I had that transition from earning no money to earning a monthly wage. And by doing that, I started going on holidays, I started traveling, going out for meals, and I kind of lost touch as to who I was, really. Although it's a fantastic thing to do, and experiencing yourself, you've got to, but I always had that drive for more. So this is why I've decided to do the swim.
And you're not just getting in the same swimming pool, swimming up and down and ticking off the miles. You're doing it, some of it up in the Lake District, which is one of the most beautiful swimming spots I've ever been to. But it's equally not that warm. Some of those lakes run very, very deep. So just take us through how you're approaching that kind of challenge, because open water swimming is a completely different thing to diving in a nice 29-degree swimming pool.
That is something I've quickly come to realise, Kevin. It is completely different to pool swimming. So as we mentioned, I didn't want to do things half-hearted. So I approached the media company. So they've decided to document the whole process. So we'll create a documentary and put it in a cinema. So we actually went out to the Lake District a month and a half ago, which towards the end of February, beginning of March. And I had no other choice than to get in and to swim, because that was the one day that we were allocated to get that done. So I bought a wetsuit and we went down to Derwent Water. Now, we were lucky enough that it didn't rain, but it was raining the day before. So I got in, and it was cold. The wetsuit done its job, but what I found was, as soon as you put your face down in the water, I began coming nauseous, with the cold, because it went into my ears and my eyes, and I began to struggle. I had to push through. I had to persevere. We had to get the filming day done, and then last week I went to Windermere, which is not as warm as I expected it to be, because we had a lovely weekend last weekend, but it was significantly warmer than Derwent Water.
So how many miles have you ticked off so far, bearing in mind that's a lot of miles you've got to get through over 2026?
Yeah, so with the filming day done back in February, it took time to edit that. So I actually only announced that I was doing the swim a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. So as it stands today, I've managed to do 50 kilometres. So with a distance of 1,070 to go, total, I've still got 1,030 left.
Well, I'm not sure why we're wasting time having this conversation. You need to be getting out there now.
Well, I've got 10 days. I've still got 10 days to spend in Kenya first.
Well, I can assure you it's going to be a lot warmer out there. One of the things that I think I'm really keen to just unpick a little bit more is this why, because as I said at the start, the the nature of being an athlete is tough, but it's a choice. When you go into work, again, you choose what career you go into, and you chose to go into a field and an environment that is inherently very challenging. And then you've chosen to then take that skill set, merge it with something else, and then apply that on the other side of the world. So just take us perhaps a little bit deeper to your why and advice for people out there who are, like you've alluded to already, struggling to step outside of their comfort zone, because that's something clearly you've done, but you went from a point of not doing that to doing it. So what's motivated you to do it, and what advice would you have for people out there who are looking to challenge themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. And I do have the answer to it. Yeah, so on a surface level, I can sit here and say that, I've been motivated by my granddad, and I want to honour the time that he's given me, and I want to get back in touch with the qualities that the sport's given me. But this is very much out my comfort zone, as I've said. And the thing that changed that for me was coming to Kenya. So it was that shift in perspective of worrying about people's judgments and worrying about people's opinions and what they'll think of me by doing this swim. Although it's something great to do, that was just how I felt. So the thing that changed that for me was last November. So last November, we come on a camp, and we had a particularly challenging operation to do. And the results weren't what we expected. So there was some emotionally heavy moments, and we can all read between the lines, but having witnessed and experienced that has made me realise that we're here once. There's no dress rehearsals. So that's what shifted my perspective from worrying about what people think to you just need to do what you want to do. You've got one life. If there's anything that you want to achieve in life, you need to go out there and you need to go and get it, because no one's going to do it for you. People will have their opinions, and people will make their own perceptions and judgments of you. But at the end of the day, you want to look back and say, I've done everything that I want to do.
You've touched on something very special and a thread that I think runs through a lot of the guests that we've spoken to. And my mind's immediately jumping back to one of our recent guests, Mark Watson, who spoke about losing his son and how that really impacted the way that he approached the rest of his life. And we actually got into a really deep conversation. I had that experience myself about 6 months before I founded the podcast, of holding my dad's hand in his last few minutes. And I think that experience really does wake you up to the time and how you spend it and what you choose to spend it on. And I would say there's this level of purpose, right? So if you had to distill your purpose now that you've gone through that experience and you've got this new challenge and those sorts of things, how do you define your purpose in terms of what you're looking to do?
So my purpose would now be to live intentionally for myself. But by doing that, I'd also like to show people that they can also do the same. Not in a, I'm going to tell you what to do type of way, but by showing it through my own life and what I'm wanting to do, and through my experiences. So for me, the swim is only the first step. Although it's a big step, I don't do things by half measures. So I've chosen swim firstly because it links back to my childhood and my career. But what's to say in the future that we won't expand into other events or other adventurous charitable fundraisers?
So if you'd go back, and I'm mindful that swimming, you start early, right? So let's perhaps take those teenage years where we're trying to figure out GCSEs and all these other things whilst we're still doing sport. If you'd have turned around to, say, a 15-year-old Jack and said, hey, in 10 years' time, you're going to be on your 8th trip to Kenya. You're going to be working with some incredible people. You're going to be leaving a legacy in a place that's going to change the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of kids. What would you go back and say to yourself? Or if you've got other 14, 15, 16-year-olds out there that find themselves in a spot of going, I have no idea what I'm going to do, what would your advice be to them?
So firstly, if I was to go back to 15, 16-year-old Jack, I'm sure he wouldn't be able to believe the situation that he's currently in, because I'm not particularly academically, as clever as other people, but through the experience that sport has given me, I've managed to be able to get to this position through hard work. So young Jack would be very proud of where he is today. But if I was to go back and tell another 15, 16-year-olds, or give them any advice, I'd say stay in sport. I'd say for as long as you can. I'd say the mindset and the qualities of life and the fitness, that there's so many aspects of improvements to life that sports gives you that I've not realised until now. So I'd say if you want to stay in sport, pursue it, because as soon as you get a job, it becomes very difficult to manage both. And the reason I left sport was ultimately for money, which I do regret, but I've managed to find a path into getting back into swimming and finding myself again. So don't do it for money.
It's one of those wonderful activities that you can dip in and out of. Certainly as an adult, there's so many routes for it, and there are threads to it that stay with you both in your personal and your professional lives. Jack, it's been absolutely awesome. I don't know if you've got a closing message for everyone or how they can perhaps follow this mission, this journey. We'll obviously include all the links to the socials and the fundraising page in the show notes, but have you got a closing message for our audience?
Yeah, do what you want to do. Go and enjoy your life, live it to the fullest, and don't care what anybody thinks. And if you want to follow the story, I'd be very much appreciative of that. I'm doing it for the charity. All funds will go towards helping create a sustainable centre here in Kenya. So if you'd like to follow along the journey, you can follow my Instagram, which is Jack F Roberts, and the links to the fundraising page and are on there. And you're also able to track the distance of the swim on a separate link.
Well, thank you so much, Jack. And on behalf of all our audience, obviously wishing you a huge good luck, both for the challenge and obviously for the trip that you are on right now.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I appreciate you allowing me to come on.
A huge thank you for joining us today for our latest podcast. You can connect with Jack on social media via the links in the notes below this episode, as well as finding out more about his mission to raise vital funds for his cause. I'm excited to share that I am now on Substack, trying to curate all my musings off the back of these conversations I get to have in sport and the world beyond. You can connect with this again via the link in the show notes. As always, please be sure to hit subscribe however you're joining us today, and we look forward to you joining us again very soon for another episode of the Road Monkey Podcast.